What is good and what is up, y'all? It's your boy here, Jay, back and better than ever with another episode of Thunder Banter. The Thunder go ahead and get the dub tonight, Friday night, against the Denver Nuggets in a hard fought game, a dogfight, really. Playoff atmosphere game 127 to 121 in Oklahoma City. In SGA's return from a 9-game absence, going ahead and dropping 36 points, adding to his point streak of 20 plus points, just continuing to do what MVPs do and continuing to uplift this Oklahoma City Thunder team against a great, formidable opponent and a familiar foe in the Denver Nuggets, especially since that 7-game series last year. But we'll get into everything that had led up to this game, especially the games, prior to this game as well, and everything after the All-Star break. So let's get right into it, all right here on Thunder Banter. What's up, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Thunder Banter. The Thunder seem to be hitting a corner after the All-Star break, winning 4 of their last 5 games and 8 of their last 12 games, leading to before the All-Star break seem to be hitting a groove right at the right time. And SGA in his return after a 9-game absence, dropping 36 points tonight against the Denver Nuggets. Just what MVPs do in continuing his 20-plus point streak of 122 consecutive games. Just unreal. We need to, appreciate what's going on before our eyes with SGA in this record that hasn't been touched and hasn't been talked about ever. And just fantastic, and seem, like I said, to be hitting a groove right at the right time with the addition of SGA back into the lineup, but also in his absence, just fantastic progression from a lot of the role players that the Thunder have. And to see the progression of them not only in that period of time, but when SGA returns in tonight's game against the Nuggets, you see Isaiah Joe, you see Aaron Wiggins, you see Jared McCann and Cason Wallace doing everything that they had been doing in prior games, continuing to distribute, continuing to play make. And that's what I've been lamenting to in my previous podcast about kind of limiting the pressure and limiting the load of what SGA has going on. And I understand that he is one of the top playmakers and the top ball handlers in the league, top scorers, most efficient scorers, all of the above. But you want to get everybody else involved just like we did last year, having a ton of chemistry. And I know we still have chemistry, but making sure everybody has the confidence in themselves to be able to go out and do what they do and score points, not just SGA. Because sometimes I feel like the Thunder become a little too reliant on what SGA can do and bring to the table. And now he's getting double teamed. Now he's getting triple teamed. And now that we're doing that, having to distribute to other guys and them doing the job and finishing the job really by putting the ball in the basket is just everything that you want to see from the role players that are so good, like Cason Wallace, who I feel like hasn't gotten a lot of limelight because of the role that he has been playing. But you see when he stepped into the role when SGA was absent, fantastic play. Really was our playmaker if you want to go there. But at the end of the day, just great to see the progression in all of the role players and all of the guys, not just the ones that I've mentioned, but including Isaiah Hartenstein, Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams had a career day and a loss. So we'll get all into it right here on Thunder Banter. But man, it's just fantastic to see the basketball that's being played after the All-Star break, especially after the up and down play that had been going on. And I know that there has been injuries. Don't get me wrong, guys. I know that there has been injuries. You guys are probably saying during this whole period of time, there's been injuries, that's why, I get it, so all that being said, we've been playing better basketball. The Thunder get a clutch win in OT in a 127 to 121 win over the Denver Nuggets in OKC, as Caruso had clutch shots in probably one of the best regular season games and best regular season games for Oklahoma City on a night SGA makes his return, and J-Dub and AJ Mitchell still out, but will be back hopefully soon in a gritty, hard-fought game literally between Jalen Williams and Jokic, as SGA and Jokic got into it early. J. Will and Jokic got into it later, and Jokic was hot. I mean, the hottest I've ever seen Jokic. The hottest I've ever seen Jokic. I mean, you see his eyes, it looked like he wanted to kill somebody. I'm not even exaggerating, guys. But had a bad hip check by Dort. That's the reason why all this happened. Not just because of, SGA throwing the ball at him early on in the game, but The bad hip check there by Dort in a flagrant two, a playoff atmosphere game, in a game where both teams feel that they will meet in the playoffs. The Thunder were winners and won 4 of their last 5 games, like I mentioned, and 8 of the last 12 going back to before the All-Star break, and all coming after a Tuesday night dub versus the Raptors, 116 to 107. Let's get into it. Nets. We'll start with the Brooklyn Nets. The Thunder would handle the Nets with ease on a 105 to 86 victory, as Jared McCann was the leading scorer for OKC off the bench. McCann 21 and 4, as only 3 OKC starters eclipsed 10 points, with Hart, Chet, and Dort. Although only shooting 42% from the field, the Thunder limited the Nets to only 37% field goal and 7 of 41 from 3, 17%. OKC defense also forced 20 turnovers and 4 blocks and 13 offensive rebounds, and out-rebounded the Nets 47 to 40. Topic and Joe also helped off the bench with over 10, positive 10 plus or minus, as OKC dominated without having their best nights. Now on to the Cavs, as the Cavs, coming in hot after the All-Star break and an undefeated since the James Harden trade, and looked to carry that momentum, but would have their 7-game win streak snapped. In OKC 121 to 113, OKC came ready to play, having all 5 starters clear 10 plus points, as Joe led the charge with 22 points, 6 of 11 for 3, 3 assists and 5 steals, with a positive plus 14 plus or minus. Kaysen Wallace also had a hell of a night, dropping 24 and 10 and a positive 13 plus or minus. Thunder offense was hot, shooting 49% from the field and 51% from 3, keeping Harden and Mitchell at bay, limiting the Cavs to 48% from the field and 38% from 3, as Harden and Mitchell both ended with 20 points flat. Mobley would chime in with 15, and Merrill would keep the game interesting, as a comeback seemed to be in the works with 20 points. Merrill off the bench shooting 6 of 10 from 3. Cavs would force 16 turnovers, but would not be enough, as the Thunder managed and would come out with a hard-fought W. Now on to Toronto, as the Thunder then headed up to the 6 in Toronto to face against the Raptors in their final meeting of the season, as the Thunder would take the 3rd straight W, 116 to 107, against a solid Raptors squad. It was the Kaysen Wallace game, as he dropped 27, 8, and 7 on 11, 16 of shooting and 4 of 5 from three-point range, just absolutely all over the place, making his presence felt. How you feel about Kaysen? I feel great about Kaysen in the lineup lately, like I said, and we're going to continue to have him in the starting lineup. I don't know if he will continue to be in there in the playoffs, but we will see, because honestly, his impact in the starting lineup and in general has been absolutely fantastic, especially during the stretch that I am talking about. But having multiple dudes that can be able to handle the ball outside of SGA is something that we need, and I'm glad that Kaysen Wallace stepped up to the plate and has been doing that, and has really been showing the league what he can do. OKC would have 4 starters in double figures, as Isaiah Joe also dropped 22 points on 6 of 11 from shooting from 3, as Kaysen also had a day as well with Caruso also had a day with 16 points off the bench, 6 of 10 from 3, as OKC shot 47% from the field and 40% from 3, while OKC defense held Ingram, Barnes, and company to 47% from the field and 47% from 3 and 58% from free throws. And that was the real difference maker, really, to be honest. All those free throws wouldn't have made, the difference, but a couple more shots and all those free throws definitely would have made the difference, not to mention OKC out-rebounded Toronto 49 to 34 as the Raptors started to make a late run, but the Thunder managed to hold on and take the victory on Tuesday night. Now on to the Pistons game, which was a gritty game. Not just this Nuggets game, but this Pistons game was absolutely gritty. The Thunder hot streak would come to an end on Wednesday night, as the Pistons solidify themselves as a serious contender to meet the Oklahoma City Thunder in the finals this season, especially with this win in Detroit, 124 to 116. Cunningham and Duren both having 29 points each, leading the way. Cade 29, 4, and 13, but 8 turnovers and 3 blocks, while Duren 29, 15, and 2, as only one other Piston with double figures. Pistons would shoot 54% from the field, 33% from three-point land, as OKC would shoot 41% from the field and had a late surge, but was not enough to catch up to the hot Pistons team. Jalen Williams had a career day in the loss, 30, 11, and 4. J Will. Okay, I did. J Will. I wasn't familiar with your game. 9 of 14 shooting and 5 of 10 from 3-point land. Crazy day shooting and 1 block in the loss. OKC without several players continuing to battle regardless of the opponent. And I think this game speaks to that more than anything, as the Pistons look to be the best team in the East and avenge their losses last season in the playoffs. And to do that against that Pistons team is just fantastic, knowing that we didn't even have our MVP. Doing that and almost winning in Detroit shows us that, we can compete with the East and what they got going this year. Wiggins, McCann, Williams, and Wallace all helped in what would have been a great comeback, but wasn't enough, as the Pistons' lead was too large. And either way, it was a positive sign playing this basketball with this team versus the Pistons, like I said, who are the best team in the East. Now leading to tonight's game. Man, was a fantastic game against the Nuggets, an absolute barn burner and an absolute playoff atmosphere, as the Thunder get the clutch OTW 127-121 over the Denver Nuggets in what felt like a playoff game, as Murray had a fiery night with 39 points. SGA returned after a 9-game absence to be able to uplift the Thunder in his first game back with 36 points. MVP talk there with 3 and 9 to accompany, as Chet also had a big night, 15, 21 and 3, career high in rebounds, 21 rebounds. If Chet could manage to do even half of that, or even 13 to 15 tonight, that would be upwards towards Jokic level and what his ability to do. Maybe not assist wise, but you see what I'm saying. Double a night, every night. SGA now 122 consecutive games with 20 plus points. Unreal to even come back and do that after a 9 games absence. Also staying 2 games ahead of the Spurs, and not to mention that Caruso and Jalen Williams having 12 points off the bench. Caruso had 2 steals, now 16 games with 2 or more steals for Caruso. And McCann in his first game playing with SGA, not in the same rotations, but 14 points in 19 minutes. Just straight production from Jared McCann. Wallace 10, 4, and 3 with key rebounds and assists. Williams, Topic, and Boeheim were all out, but the Nuggets balled out as well, with Murray 39 points, 39, 8, and 6, showing his all-star worthy level this season. First-time all-star, shout out to him. Then while Jokic also had 23, 17, and 14, but shot 9 of 25, as he was also messed with mentally and thrown off his game in what seemed to be a little bit in that altercation with Dort and Williams. Look, Dort, I don't think is a dirty player, but it was a dirty play there, I will admit. Not backing his actions, but it's a playoff atmosphere and physicality all around. Was like I said, dirty in a way, but the things in the NBA, it's always dirty, and people don't catch that, right? The average fan doesn't catch how dirty the NBA is. I understand that was put on national television and really was, kind of profound because of the whole Jokic thing. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't say that Dort is an extremely dirty player. Yes, he has had some altercations, but at the end of the day, he isn't have malintent. There isn't like he's trying to injure somebody. Yes, that was a little bit low in the knee area, but at the end of the day, I'm not for or defending what he did. I'm just saying that the NBA is very, very physical, and people don't catch that. And yeah, this one did get caught, but I think that Dort might have a suspension because of the fact that was called in flagrant 2. Maybe a little bit harsh, but either way, I think that we can progress and continue on and not see Dort as, some, I guess, bad guy, if you will go there. Braun also had 23, 8, and 2, and Hardaway 16 off the bench, but wasn't enough, as OKC out-rebounded the Nuggets 56-51 and forced 17 turnovers, accompanied by 10 blocks by the Thunder. OKC also shot 46% from the field and 34% from 3-point land, limiting the Nuggets to 42% from the field. Nuggets will get Aaron Gordon back, and we will see with these two teams you will see this team in this matchup 2 more times this season, 1 in Denver and 1 in Oklahoma City. But guys, in the end, glad the production of all the role players on the Thunder, even though SGA came back and they seemed to find a way to play make, and especially McCann and Wallace, and even though Joe, who, kind of had to, learn while SGA was gone, has even fulfilled that role as well. I've been lamenting, like I said, more ball handlers. But OKC has room for improvement, guys. I always want to be on their butts a little bit about making sure that we can continue to move in the right direction and not stay stagnant. I think that we're doing so now after the All-Star break, but there's no timetable on when Jay will or AJ Mitchell will come back at this point in time. So we will continue to grow this chemistry with the guys that we got and the confidence, and can't wait to see more of McCann and SGA and hopefully the same rotation, guys, because we are all looking forward. But man, we're all looking great right now. 4 of the last 5 games, 8 out of the last 12. Wanted to go gloss over a little bit of what's going on in the Thunder land, but man, got a lot going on, y'all. So stick with me and stick with the pod, and I'm glad that you guys can tune in. But in the end, now it's a race to the finish line, making sure that we stay healthy and consistent. But that's a wrap, all right here on Thunder Banter.